At MTAC Another World, we got to talk to Ed Chavez from DENPA, an indie manga publisher, in this awesome interview for the Awesome Cast.
Hello and welcome, everyone. We are at MTAC Another World and happy to be joined by Ed Chavez. Ed, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, how's your convention been so far?
Pretty good. It's been a little while. This is actually my first con of the year, and yeah, it's nice to be able to kind of stretch out those muscles again at a show that I haven't actually been to in a city that I come to. I won't say often, but frequently enough. So there's a little bit of familiarity and then a lot of new experiences. But it's also nice to have some familiar faces here as well. So it makes it feel relatively comfortable.
Yeah, I remember this is going back to back when Twitter was good.
How long ago was that?
We're talking maybe possibly up to 15 years ago.
I know.
It was Twitter and men were men.
Yeah. It was one of the first interactions I had with you. And this is back when you were still at Vertical.
Uh-huh.
And I think I was just saying hi or something. And your responses back in a DM is just let you all know, I know how much reach podcasts actually have. So don't trust to get any review copies of anything. And I'm like, this is the first time Ed's actually talked to me. This is interesting. But he's wrong. He's not wrong. He's absolutely right. Our reach is 10 people maybe.
And that was back then, too,
yeah,
where podcasts were a budgeting thing, you know?
Yeah.
Basically every third person had a podcast. I had a podcast.
You did?
I had a couple podcasts.
You even said that. Look at my username. This came from a podcast. The reach, and I'm like, that's cool. And I was just saying hi. I get that. I'm still buying these books. I'm not, and that's when I learned, oh man, if you want what they call a straight shooter, that's Ed. You've always spoken from the heart.
Yeah, maybe a bit too much so. But yeah, you catch me behind the booth. I have a hard time turning it off. Not so much outside, outside of those outside of that context. I'll shoot it pretty straight, but there's a reason why most people call me Mango.
Right.
It's
So I guess we should point out, if you've never heard of Ed before, well, congratulations, you're now being blessed. But you've been doing the whole manga or mango, depending on how you want to say it. You've been in it for a minute.
A little bit. It's just covering it. It's been 26 years now. Before the first manga boom,
mm-hmm.
Before Tokyo Pop was making official mango, the real mango back in the early aughts. It started off many ages ago, many fandoms ago, I guess, writing on Anime on DVD. I don't know if anybody remembers that.
Yeah,
that's gone through a couple of renames since, but just a crazy nerd. At the time, I was going through grad school out on the West Coast, just obsessed with manga, really, and Sega products. And for a while, that's basically all I could do in regards to my pop culture. Then I'm going to Japan for a couple of years, still doing my grad work, and it just got worse. Wasn't really consuming anything else while I was out there, to be honest. I came back, launched the blog and podcast, really early days of podcasting. That was back in 2003. So podcasting possibly formally for me.
Yeah, period.
Yeah. And, when RSS was a thing.
Yeah.
And very quickly after that, just finding a lot of other nerds who had similar interests, some of them still in the industry, some of them not. And that ended up getting a little bit of attention of the actual industry proper, whether that was Viz and 7Cs and then eventually DC for CMX for a bit. I was writing for publications like Publishers Weekly and Wired and The Guardian, San Francisco. Even did a little bit of writing for Japanese publications before moving on to Tokyo to work for Kodansha in Japan. The first weebs to do that. Interesting.
Remember talking to you, and I mentioned I really like the anime Giant Killing. And I edited that.
Yeah, yeah, that was. I worked for Morning, and I was one of, at the time, 3 editors working on that. There was an editor just working on the writing, another one, and myself. We were doing the research for soccer with Locker Room. So it was kind of, it taught me just how different editorial departments are over there. Like some of them, you're basically essentially journalists or researchers, and then some of them are there literally just writing. Well, not literally, but helping to write the scripts for the comics and content. And after those guys in the same department ended up making a spoof comic called Gurazeni about me, I ended up leaving to go work for Vertical. Because they were trying to expand their manga department. They were mostly just doing classic work. Like the only thing that was modern from them was Guin Saga. Guin Saga being modern was kind of funny to say in 2008. But they were mostly just doing Keiko Takemiya and Tezuka. But I was pretty fortunate to. It wasn't easy to go to New York and build something that I don't know. What do you think? I think it made an impact on the industry, just because the rest of the market wasn't really doing anything. Like they were just mostly just working on shonen and seinen outside of Dark Horse, really. So,
no, I definitely think there's.
I mean, not shonen and seinen, shonen and shoujo. Yeah.
I mean, I know that Vertical now feels like it's more like an imprint than it is its own thing. But even
that's what it is now. Yeah.
It is still like if you want the quote unquote the good stuff, the real stuff, like it's almost like a prestige imprint now. And I don't think it would have been that way except for the work that y'all did with Vertical to get it there. Yeah,
I mean that was an interesting 9 years, and like I said, it wasn't very easy. The company was really running just low fuel all that time. Right. Not a lot of staff, not a lot of money. That didn't turn around until the last couple of years that I was there. Still wasn't really a lot of staff, but we did finally hire an accountant and another marketing person before I left, so that helped a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's looking back at it, it's like I kind of brought back Gundam, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. I launched Shuzo Oshimi, and he's like one of the few authors that people know by their name now, which is super interesting. Being able to work with Satoshi Kon, his works was very, very important to me. And, I don't know how much of the fandom these days remember him, but for people, I think our age, he was very significant and very influential, touched a lot of us, unfortunately, when he passed away.
Yes.
And then also just to be ahead of the curve when it came to things like Makoto Shinkai, before Your Name, and be able to do a lot of his works, be ahead of things like Inio Asano, and to inspire or motivate Viz to actually give a shit about Junji Ito. We started to pull away some of those titles, and then they were like, oh, yeah, hold up, yeah, he's actually selling for other people. So, but all of that kind of like gave me a little bit of confidence and motivation to start on my UX. So now,
what's your favorite Sega product?
I mean, I still ride hard with my Dreamcasts. I now still have 3. I've given away a couple to friends. I have my Sega Sports Black Edition. I have my Sakura Wars Pink, and I still have one of the just classic white and grays. Had to give a couple of those away to friends who needed parts and stuff. Man, honestly, if not for the Dreamcast, I would not be I wouldn't be talking to you guys. That's not even a joke. I ended up making friends with Japanese mangaka who were on SegaNet, and that wasn't something that really was utilized that much here in the US. But that was like my internet when I was a very young 20 something. It was interesting to talk to people like Lisa Ito, who I would later come to find out, like, I think it was maybe 12, 13 years later, that she's best friends with Konami Kanata. They grew up in the same neighborhood. So she's the creator of Chief Sweet Home. Lisa Ito is kind of her mentor. Super hardcore josei artist. One of her works has been translated by Viz, but just only as a digital only. So she hasn't been seen over here in any type of capacity. But I used to. It wasn't a scanlation, but she was trying to get some stuff back in the SegaNet type of days, translated into English. And I was helping her, like, oh, these are your scripts. We just post up things on her SegaNet way back in the day.
Wow.
And that, once I started going to Japan on a regular, I actually went to Tokyo for the Dreamcast launch. That was my first time going to Japan by myself. And so, yeah, me and the old DC have a long relationship.
So what's your favorite Dreamcast?
Oh, crap. I mean, it's still possibly Street Fighter Alpha 3 Plus Zero.
Good answer.
I love that game. And I love just like how it did bring back, or just like built up, just a greater Capcom universe in a way that wasn't within the Marvel versus universe. Right. So starting to bring in, the Final Fight characters, and then a bunch of like the stuff that came in from the Game S magazine, characters like Maki and those characters coming in, the manga only characters from this, Sakura comics that existed. Yeah, I thought. I mean, forget about the gameplay. I was insane with that, but just being able to have such a broad cast of characters, so many different styles, and then obviously the way Alpha had, the 3 different versions that you can play.
Yeah.
As someone who was there really early on, in bowling alleys and gaming arcades, playing Street Fighter 2, and just having to literally wait in line to get your turn again. Yeah. To now have all of it basically in a game that kind of unified a lot of those fighting styles too. Like it was a godsend for me, because all of a sudden I was learning a different language with all these different characters.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We
gotta run some sets.
For a longest time, I would keep on going back to that game. When the Capcom collections were coming out for Switch and PS4, those were one of the few games I would buy for either of those machines. Yeah, I just had to go back to it. It's not the same now. It doesn't feel like the same. Yeah, but I still think they're great games. I also like Power Stone.
Okay,
Power Stone's good.
But then it kind of shows that I like Capcom.
I never got my hands on Cannon Spo.
Most of my Street Fighter Alpha 3 playing was actually, because that's what I still am, which is not as good as what it was. It was like the best.
Yeah. I don't think the Upper ever got.
No, those are all Japanese. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the closest was they released Double Upper for the PSP.
That was chunky PSP.
Yeah,
I mean, the controllers was the issue there, but just as a whole, it was.
It's not like you could plug an arcade stick
into
a PSP.
So you're now doing DENPA. You've struck out on your own. You're like, I say like, you are an independent publisher. Uh-huh. How has that been like?
It's interesting. It's interesting. It's what I expected, but at the same time, like, the challenges that end up arising, they make sense, but it's like one of those. It's like one of those things. You get into a ring, and then you don't know. And I'm saying this metaphor within, like, say, just martial arts, and you don't know what's going to hit you until you actually get hit in the face. You don't know what your opponent is. You don't know what your challenges are. You could try to prepare yourself as best as you can. When I did that, I'd already been in the industry for almost 15 years. I'd done not at all, but plenty. Like, I've been an editor, I've been a translator, marketer, salesperson, had years of licensing experience, tortured people at cons, and that was all helpful. I made a lot of great connections. All that opened the doors to the varying levels of success for DENPA. But at the same time, we're just a company of 4 people full time, with investment just literally being the profits that we. And yeah, we had a little bit of seed money here and there, and some loans, which are scary these days with interest rates. But yeah, it's hard because a lot has happened in just those. We've gone through supply chain. Now I'm literally having to deal with years. Yeah, like some of that is there are exceptions for some things, and there have been highs and lows. Like this for 6 months after during the pandemic, basically there were no stores outside of Amazon. Like nobody was going shopping, at least most places across the country. But then there was a boom after that. Like people were just kind of at home for a bit and media to consume. So that was nice for a little bit, but it was kind of my decision at the time just to take some of those gains to get more licenses. Now because we're so small, instead of hiring more people, that's where I put my focus. We're still slowly just releasing some of those things like 3 or 4 years ago. So, lessons learned, and I'm constantly learning new things for that matter. But at the same time, it's been really interesting the last couple of years specifically, just to see, where not just where DENPA is, but where the work that I've done within this business, how far that's here, whether it's in Europe. That's been kind of, I really didn't appreciate it until recent.
So I've got 2 questions, but they sound similar, but they're 2 different questions. Mm-hmm. And the first question will be what do you look for in manga as a reader?
I get asked that so often, and unfortunately the answer is not great for most. I don't really care. What I look for really is, I tend to look for important people. I'm not in the business of generally not in the business of nurturing talent, but I am extremely aware of who is moving the needle, who is inspiring, not just anime creators, but just other comicers. Not just in Japan, but thankfully we're not isolated in that situation. We're not just geographically in that bubble. We're looking at this from outside, so we can see from a different perspective what this medium is to readership globally. And that's kind of what and kind of going back to an answer that I had earlier. I wasn't necessarily talking about title. I was listing out a bunch of artists that I got to work with. True.
Yeah.
And it's a very different angle than what most of the consumers tend to look at. But those people, they mean something to me. And I want to be able to share their work, their perspectives, their art, their views on our world, and hopefully in our reality, is why I don't do isekai. But yeah, I want to be able to share those ideas with people. And it's hard to kind of express that even to publishers in Japan, because generally speaking, what they want, the answer that they want is, so what type of genres, right, what type of art style do you like, what type of like stories, and I'm like, if you look at our catalog, we fucking do almost every genre. I haven't done that much horror, which is fair, but not that I haven't, but pretty much almost in any other thing. Like, we're the only people who do kids manga. We're one of the few publishers that actually dig deep into comedy, So
is that like the same ethos then that also makes you help you figure out what?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, people can think, Ed wants to publish Mitsuru Adachi because he's a classic artist. No, if he had a short story collection that was like just a couple years old, I would most likely pick. If Q&A wasn't as long as it is right now, I would possibly. Moto Hage was still drawing stuff. That would be, but that's also why Little Leo was something that we also published, because that's one of our recent works. So, that's not to say that these artists are completely ignored globally because that's not the case either. But at the same time, to me personally and to my staff, almost all these artists that we work, almost all, not all of them, mean something to us. And that is literally the point. Which is why we don't even do surveys. I used to do that at Vertical. I was working for a bigger company, and people may not understand that. And yeah, I had an editor-in-chief, and I had a president that had to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And that would go back all the way up the chain to Kodansha. There were so many things that ended up going to other publishers or not getting published at all. Because we don't think that could sell. And that's not, obviously I do want my books to break even at least, but yeah, that's not a, oh shit, Pampania is awesome. And when I read Pampania, it's like, why didn't anybody publish this? And then all of a sudden after we do, then a bunch of markets globally. I don't know why that.
I've always said, and Ed, I try. That is something I've said for many years, because I think that some way, somehow, you do have an eye for this stuff, and you tend to pick interesting winners. Maybe not just they'll always win, but they are always interesting. You do take chances. Like you announced that compilation of Mitsuru short stories. I was like, oh shoot, that thinking of me when he did this. It feels like he was thinking of me when he did that. You're possibly the 10th thing down the. I'll take that. But
yeah, no. I've been reading Adachi regularly since, and for those mango heads out there, he wasn't translated until the aughts, and none of that sold. So for me, he's it's Rumiko Takahashi's my mom, and it's Mitsuru Adachi's my dad. There's Koyama Yu's my weird uncle. I haven't had a chance to translate his works because Azumi and most of his other properties are like 40 volumes long. But give me a chance, I'll get to people like that. But no, I needed to. It's fun. It's really funny to frame it this way. A lot of what DENPA does, not all of it. A lot of what DENPA does is kind of an expression. This is who.
You brought Gun at the Origin.
I'm not super obsessive about it, but I do love it.
You also did The Men Who Created Gun.
Yeah.
Great. Obviously 100% autograph.
Oh, entirely, yeah. It's
all happened exactly on the pages.
You finally get to see Hajime Yadate in the flesh or on the ink. His belt buckle and cowboy hats.
Exposure to manga, and what were some of the early titles?
So I had a chance to live there as a child, as a wee child. My dad worked in construction for a while after he was a longshoreman, and we were out there in Osaka when they were kind of remodeling the World Expo that happened there, the previous World Expo. There's a new one that just launched like last week, and so the park where that was set, they were tearing down all the buildings and turning it into an actual park. And my dad was there for a couple of years. And I won't say anime was everywhere, but it was on TV. Manga was available. This was around like Japan's manga. So my older sister was, she's 4 years older. She's elementary school age. Funny thing is, like, Japanese is kind of her first language, so it's especially for a Latino household. And at the time, I was just too young to really read. But when we moved back to San Francisco, I don't know, like, everything just kind of fell into place. I moved into a community where there's a significant Asian expat population, not just Japanese people, but Chinese Americans, Taiwanese Americans. And a lot of those communities were reading manga, whether it was translated in English or the Chinese or it's just raw in Japanese. So my sister ended up, she would go to Kinokuniya, this other bookstore in Japantown, SF Japan, called Junkodo. And I got to read, like I said, a lot of Rumiko Takahashi. I still want to figure out a way to publish this next author, Ichijo Yukari. So she is not really that well known here, but she is prolific as a josei and shoujo author in Japan. Best known for her title Yukan Club, which is a title I grew up reading, basically about, and this is during like Japan's like financial boom. So basically it's 5 rich kids and they just get into like shenanigans hanging out with like sheiks and military leaders globally, just fucking around because they have money. Kind of, it's a little funny to frame it like I'm looking at how oligarchs are fucking things around right now, but that seemed cute way back in the early 80s. It was very tongue in cheek, by the way. Like I said, those characters were kind of fooling around, but that was a really fun shoujo type of the time. Yeah, I read a lot of Adachi. I read as I grew older, almost everything that I was reading was Shogakukan. So a lot of Shonen Sunday, a lot of Spirits, a lot of big comics. Yeah, seinen rom-coms, which is a genre that kind of comes in and out over here. And as I became like a teen, and then was in my early 20s, Viz started translating things like Pulp magazine, and that completely aligned with what I was.
Pulp was really something special. That was around the time that Kevin were really started getting to reading manga. Pulp hit us right coming out, and it hit us hard.
Yeah. I mean, I was like very much Animerica, like until Pulp came around, and then it was someone like a handful of freaks here in the States see me. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I ended up working with a chunk of them in different capacities, but eventually. But the other funny thing too is that we were all in San Francisco. A lot of it, whether it came from the editorial choices, the localized, like I could hear, it's going to sound funny, I could hear a very San Francisco voice. So it felt very, very much, but yeah, not so, yeah. Even though it was big with most of my other friends, a lot of people in the circles that I read Dragon Ball, but I wasn't shonen. It was just something outside of a couple of things, maybe City Hunter, their sports titles, but grew up a Shogakukan boy, still am.
Because the theme of this convention, Another World, I've been asking guests, if you had to be transported, it doesn't have to be from anime or manga, where would you go?
If I got teleported to another world, it'd possibly be the world of Slayer.
Okay, good answer.
Yeah, I can eat right there with Amelia and Lena. I think I may be a little more useful than Gaori, though not as handsome.
I wouldn't say that.
And yeah, like just like all those characters, I know when to run. So I think it'd be a good time. I wouldn't mind like roasting up a fish man ever so often. So,
yeah. That's excellent. Well, Ed, thank you so much for your time. This has been wonderful.
No, thanks for having me.
And that was the interview. Thanks once again to Ed and MTAC for letting us talk and hang out for a bit. It was a wonderful conversation. You can find links for Ed, us, and everything we do at our website on the Awesomecast, awesomecast.com, OSMCAST.com. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you, Ed and John, for joining me, Basil, the guy who edited this. Theme song was done by DJ Debuto. You can find his stuff at djdebuto.com. Again, all these links you can find on our website. Anyways, have a great one. Take care.
It's a wild, lucky line, I hate it.